What's up, YouTube? So in this video, I'm going to be going over my top 10 quarterbacks for the 2022 NFL Draft Class. This is the first position group I am recording. As you can see, I'm going to be working backwards from 10 to 1. And my first quarterback I'm going to be talking about is Levi Lewis. Brock Purdy would be my 11th. If you're curious, he's like an honorable mention from Iowa State, but he is just barely off the list. I had a hard time deciding between him and Levi, but I have decided on Levi Lewis. I have videos separately on all of them, but I will also go over my thoughts on them here as well and talk about them in relation to each other. So, that being said, Levi Lewis is the quarterback from Louisiana. He is 5'10 and 184 pounds, which is one of the reasons that he is lower on the list, is because he does definitely lack size, and that is going to really hurt him. He is left-handed, as you can see from the picture, but he definitely has the arm strength. It's not elite, but it is definitely above average. He's shown the ability to throw into tight windows with velocity. He definitely has the athleticism to extend plays at a very good level, probably around Jalen Hurts level, not necessarily like Lamar Jackson, but still very, very athletic. Is very dynamic and is able to throw the football very well on the move. Has a really good pump fake, which is something a little underrated for him. Can absolutely make people miss an open space. And despite him being a scrambler, he has shown the willingness to throw the ball away when he needs to, but he does still have the issue of holding the ball too long sometimes, which kind of comes with having a scrambling quarterback. One thing I will say is I would like to see him keep his feet moving in the pocket. Sometimes he does kind of stand still in the pocket, which is something I'm not a big fan of. He also has a tendency to stare down receivers. That's something that he's definitely going to have to work on. Accuracy definitely shows flashes. Like I said, you do see him throw it into very accurate tight windows with velocity, but it is inconsistent. But some throws he makes are absolutely gorgeous and perfect, but it is inconsistent. Obviously, with him being 5'10", seeing the field can be an issue for him. I wouldn't be shocked if someone asked him to play receiver or corner or something, just because he does have the athleticism and he is lacking that size. But I think he can be a pretty solid quarterback. Definitely a day 3 guy, probably mid to late day 3. Honestly, he might even end up going undrafted just because of his size, but I think he is better than that. He definitely can, I think, be a solid backup in this league and possibly develop into more. He does have the physical traits to be able to do it, but he is going to have to get to a team that is going to look past the size issue. So that is the thing with him. So let's go ahead and move to our next quarterback, Jack Coan, quarterback from Notre Dame. So he is 6'3" and 223 pounds. Obviously, he is a transfer quarterback, and I actually watched him last year too. He is mostly a pocket passer. He's not gonna wow you with his athleticism, but he can throw the football on the move a little bit. He has shown the ability to throw the ball with some touch, and he actually reads the field okay too. But I do think he needs good protection just because he isn't really that athletic. His mechanics are okay, but I still think it could be improved. His arm strength is pretty average, to be honest, and that is one of the things that does set him back a little bit. He also needs to be able to set his feet to be accurate. Like I said, he can throw the football on the move a little bit, but it is pretty inconsistent when he gets out there. And his accuracy is kind of inconsistent anyway. Like, if he is off platform, it throws off his accuracy immensely. But it does show flashes of him being able to make good throws. He also doesn't really move that well in the pocket as far as like being able to step up and things like that. But he is a very tough quarterback. And I honestly had a pretty hard time deciding between him and Levi Lewis, like where to put them. Because I think Jack Coan can step in as like a mid to late day 3 guy and immediately be a really solid NFL backup. I think that is like a for sure thing, and I think he can do it with just about any team. But Levi Lewis is going to be a little bit more specific. I think Levi definitely needs to develop a little bit more And there are only going to be a handful of teams that are going to look past that size issue with him. So that is why I put Jack over Levi. But I do think that Levi actually has the higher ceiling than Jack. But I think Jack's floor is a little bit higher. So I had a little bit of difficulty deciding between them. And you're going to see that with a couple of more of these players throughout this list. Speaking of which, let's go ahead and move forward. Dustin Crumb, quarterback from Kent State. So he is 6'3" and 207 pounds. Really solid arm strength, pretty underrated in that department. Obviously, with Kent State, the low competition is definitely a concern. He's actually pretty mobile. He's got some solid athleticism to him. And actually, despite him only being 207 pounds, he's actually fairly strong as well, which is nice. He loves to be able to throw the deep ball. That's one thing he definitely loves to do. He likes to put a lot of air on it. He can definitely throw a touch. He does have a tendency to scramble when he doesn't need to and kind of put his eyes down, which is something I'm not a fan of. He has shown the ability to throw the football pretty solidly on the move. He doesn't throw with very much anticipation, unfortunately. But I think his mechanics are pretty inconsistent, and that throws off his accuracy. His mental processing also shows flashes, but has no kind of consistency. I see him as like a early day 3, probably somewhere in the 4th or 5th round. I think he could develop into being a decent player, but I think he can step in as a decent backup right away. So, and I think he does have eventual starter potential. So that's why he is above Jack and Levi Lewis. Because I think he has a higher floor than Levi, but a higher ceiling than Jack. But I think Levi has a higher ceiling than both of them, if that makes sense. So, sorry, there's a truck outside. But anyway, moving on to our number 7 quarterback, Carson Strong from Nevada. So he is 6'4" and 215 pounds. And he is another just pure pocket passer. Has a pretty good base, which is great. And he has an electric arm. He definitely, like, if you're looking for a, 6'4", strong arm quarterback, this is your guy. Can definitely throw with velocity, but also has shown the ability to throw with touch. He does have a tendency to overthrow people with that big arm he's got. But there are times where when he throws the ball, it just looks gorgeous. But it is nothing consistent at all. His accuracy, it almost sometimes seems like an accident when he's like makes an absolutely gorgeous throw. Like, I don't even know if he can tell you how he did it. Ball placement definitely isn't great. He's more just throwing to a receiver and not necessarily a spot. He's not always that good at making sure he's putting it in a place where his receiver can, get good yards after catch and things of that nature. So I want to see him work on that. And unfortunately for me, I don't think his accuracy is enough to make up for his lack of athleticism. And he also tends to struggle with pressure a little bit. But I do believe that the flashes of accuracy he does show and the arm strength he has do make him an interesting developmental prospect. I like Dustin Crumb. I think he's probably like a 4th, maybe early 5th round guy that I think can develop into being a decent player. But I do think he is going to have to develop. So let's go ahead and move to our number 6 quarterback, Caleb Ealy from Western Michigan. Sorry about the background noise. He is 6'1" and 210 pounds. If you do end up drafting this guy, just know that he really, really likes RPO, so definitely make that a part of your scheme if he's going to start for you. Got a really quick release, very, very confident in his arm, and he's right too because he definitely has plenty of arm strength. He's shown the ability to hit the deep ball well and has a lot of velocity. He has also shown the ability to throw a touch, and he can also make some pretty decent plays with his feet. But he also does have a tendency to run when he doesn't need to, which is unfortunate because, like I said, he does have a pretty big arm, and he's actually pretty decently accurate too. But I will say his decision-making is what really limits him, and he makes a lot of throws that at the NFL level will absolutely be intercepted. So that definitely needs to improve, and he has a tendency to panic under pressure. I see him as a solid, like, late 3rd round to early 4th round type of developmental quarterback. that I think can really develop into being something special, or at least solid as hell. But he is definitely going to need to sit under a veteran quarterback and develop before you really want to throw him to the wolves. So, let's move on to Desmond Ritter, our number 5 quarterback. He is the quarterback from Cincinnati. He is 6'4" and 215 pounds. He's another guy I actually watched last year, thinking he was going to come out last year, but he didn't. Has some solid mobility to him. He's no Lamar Jackson, but he ended up running a 4.5 40 at the combine, so he's definitely on the more athletic side for quarterbacks. He's shown the ability to throw the football very well on the move. He extends plays well. He has an electric arm, like really, really, really solid arm. Loves to throw the deep ball. His mechanics show flashes, but it's nothing consistent at all. And despite his ability to scramble, he does seem to be comfortable throwing from the pocket, which is great. He's got a nice pump fake that he likes to use and uses well. He does, like a lot of these other quarterbacks, have a tendency to run when he doesn't need to and put his eyes down. He also, with that big arm, tends to throw bullets when he doesn't need to. Like even when his receiver is like wide open and he's running like a 5-yard crossing route and he's right in front of him, he'll still throw a bullet and try to like throw it through him. You don't need to do that. Let that off a little bit. It's going to make it harder to catch. Plus, when you're throwing bullets, especially that close, you have to be absolutely perfectly accurate, because if you're at all off on your throw, it's going to your receiver isn't going to have time to adapt to the throw. So there's that. He doesn't really tend to throw with very much touch. That's one thing I want to see him improve on for sure. And also his decision-making absolutely has to improve. He makes a lot of throws that should be picks that he's lucky that aren't. Very inconsistent accuracy, but absolutely shows flashes. There are times where he makes absolutely gorgeous throws for sure. He also has a tendency to hold the ball too long and also overthrows people with that big arm of his and kind of throws the ball a little high. You're probably going to want to have some big-bodied receivers for him to throw to. He also doesn't have a whole lot of ball placement, which is something unfortunate. I'd like to see him, like I said, get that ball to his receivers a little bit easier and get them in situations where they can get some yak. Also, one thing I noticed is that he does have some pretty significant fumble problems, so that is absolutely something he has to improve on. So, moving forward, Sam Howell from North Carolina. So he is 6'1" and 220 pounds. He is really strong for a quarterback, very good balance, has some solid velocity, and he is willing to lower his shoulder into somebody. Can absolutely scramble and buy time, but isn't like super fast. Needs to learn to throw the ball away sometimes. Sometimes he does play a little bit of hero ball. But he does throw the football well on the move. He does have a tendency to lead his receivers into hits, which is something I can't stand. Mechanics absolutely could use some work. Definitely needs to use his hips more. And because of it, he also tends to throw the ball a little bit high because of his mechanics. Ball placement is definitely lacking, but he definitely has the athleticism. He has the size, he has the arm, and he does show flashes of accuracy to make him an interesting developmental quarterback. In a year where the quarterback room isn't quite as good as some other classes, I think he is still one of the top guys. If you end up having to start him, he loves RPOs, so definitely make that a part of his offense for sure. He also needs to learn to throw with a little bit more anticipation. That is one thing I definitely noticed on tape. But moving on to our number 3 quarterback, Kenny Pickett. He is the quarterback from Pittsburgh, 6'3", 230 pounds. He definitely has some mobility to him, very nimble feet. His lead foot could be a little bit better, but that's okay. Mechanics are solid, but definitely could be improved. Has shown the ability to throw with touch and velocity when needed. He's very, very confident in his arm. Decision-making definitely needs work, though. Sometimes that overconfidence will definitely get him in trouble. He tends to throw it into double coverage and throw throws that will be intercepted in the league, but kind of gets away with it sometimes. He also has a tendency to run when he doesn't need to at times. I also would say that he has a above-average arm, but it is not elite by any means. But I will say he's actually pretty accurate, which is great. I know a lot of people are concerned about his hand size. As long as he's wearing gloves, I'm really not that worried about that. I'm more worried about his decision making, but he absolutely shows the ability to make NFL caliber throws. Has shown the ability to throw the football well on the move, but I do think he looks better throwing from the pocket. So let's move on to my number 2 quarterback. So my number 1 and 2, I had a really hard time. I think you guys probably know who the number 1 is at this point. I'll probably just talk. I'll talk about Malik Willis first. So he is the quarterback from Liberty. He is 6'1" and 215 pounds. I'm going to go over both my number 1 and 2 quarterback, and then I'm going to go over why I put one over the other and stuff like that. So he is definitely the most athletic quarterback in this class. He is extremely elusive. Very, very elite quarterback athleticism for sure. Probably a little bit more athletic than Jalen Hurts, but not quite on that like Lamar Jackson type level. Mechanics definitely could be better. He has a tendency to run if his first read isn't open. And he kind of puts his eyes down, which is something I want to see him improve on. Decision-making as a whole kind of needs to improve, especially his pre- and post-snap reads both need to improve for sure. I also think he needs to protect himself a little bit more, stuff like sliding and getting out of bounds, not taking the unnecessary hits. But he absolutely has an electric arm, and I actually think his arm could actually be even better if he were to improve his mechanics and throw with his shoulder a little bit more. I think if he did that, I think his arm could be even better than it is now. And he does show flashes of accuracy, but it isn't consistent. But he absolutely has shown the ability to throw with touch and velocity. I've seen him make some very tight NFL caliber throws. He just needs to get more consistent with it. I think he has the highest ceiling out of any quarterback in this class. I don't actually think it's close. He shows a lot of flashes, but he is very, very raw. I think he would benefit from sitting for a year to kind of develop before starting. But unfortunately, a lot of these teams are very quarterback needy, so I don't know if he's going to get that opportunity. I know a lot of rumors are, him going to Pittsburgh. I think that would be a fantastic fit for him. So yeah, let's move on to my number 1 quarterback, Matt Corral. So out of all the quarterback listing, this was the hardest. I knew very early on that my number 1 and 2 were Matt Corral and Malik Willis, and that Kenny Pickett was probably my number 3. But I had a very hard time deciding between Matt and Malik. So Matt Corral, I'll talk about him before I talk about why I picked him over Malik. He is 6'2" and 205 pounds. He has a very quick release. He's shown the ability to escape from pressure and make you miss an open space. Actually got some elusiveness to him. Loves RPOs, very good at it. So if you start him, definitely implement that. His mechanics definitely need to be improved a little bit. But he has some really, really good arm strength. His footwork shows flashes but is inconsistent. Can absolutely hurt you with his legs, like I said. He actually can slide pretty well. That's something that Malik Willis could learn from. He's definitely shown the ability to throw NFL caliber throws, both with velocity and touch. And like Malik, I think if he improved his mechanics, I actually think his arm could be a little bit better than it is now. I think if he used his shoulder a little bit more in his throws, I think his arm could be even better. He also has a tendency to get tunnel vision at times and kind of stare down receivers, which is something I definitely want to see him improve on. But he is very elusive, really good at throwing the deep ball. I also do think he should sit and develop. I don't honestly think that any of these quarterbacks are necessarily ready right now. I think Matt Corral is the most ready. And also, I feel when you watch Matt Corral, for me, there is just this certain competitiveness that you see him play with. And I'm not saying that Malik or Kenny or some of these other guys don't have that, but he just seems to have it a little bit more. I definitely think that Malik Willis has way more. I think he has a much higher ceiling, but I think Matt Corral is better today. But I do think Malik Willis, if he ends up in the right situation, can absolutely be the best quarterback in this class. That's why I had such a hard time deciding between them. Because if we're talking about where their potential is, I think Malik Willis is higher. But if we're talking about who is the best quarterback in this class, in my opinion, right now, today, like if I had to if I had to play a game, if I had to coach a game today with quarterback with just the prospects in this draft, what quarterback do I want? I would go with Matt Corral today. If I can sit a quarterback and develop him for a few years, and groom him, then I would pick Malik Willis. So I had a very hard time, and in the end, I ended up picking floor over ceiling. So, anyway, that's going to do it for this video. If you liked it, I'd appreciate hitting that like button. If you have any questions or comments in the comments down below, subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll see you next time. Bye, guys.